it could be a cooperative scene where, I mean, it could be similar effects, maybe like the Star Wars movie or The Fifth Element, where humans will be able to cooperate with other species instead of having fear amongst themselves because there are negative beings ensnaring them so much so they can't get this freedom. They have a deserving right to know who the councils are, especially the Council of Five. We will talk about the rest of the 4 out of the Council of Five, which used to be 9 on the next episode, as well as the many other species and higher extraterrestrial species that mankind, or at least most of mankind here in this current realm, don't know that are currently working alongside humans behind the scenes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 23. Blue, how are you?
I'm good today, Mike.
Awesome. Hey, I know we're going to have a big show as usual today. What are we going to talk about today in 23?
Well, one of the main things we'll be talking about is this flesh-eating bacteria growth that is being circulated around the state of Florida itself in USA. And this type of seaweed causes problems. It was manually set to cause problems, and believe it or not, it has an artificial electromagnetic interference data stream that causes sickness, negative polarity scores, and eats away only, from what we know right now, humans' flesh, not animals' flesh. It's not affecting things from what we know through the animals, the oceanic creatures. This is like, if you think about it, it's kind of closer to what COVID would be. But it's another way to implement a bad causeway effect for mankind. One of the things that currently Space Force is going up against, and one of the things that HAARP and these negative beings are generating.
Well, sounds like we got a lot to talk about here. Hey, before we get started, though, I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for listening. And again, if we're not in a place where you normally get your stuff, let us know and we'll get on that platform. But please make sure you like and subscribe. Click on notifications as well so you know when we post new material. Blue, let's get right into it. Let's talk more about this flesh-eating bacteria.
Flesh-eating bacteria is what most humans perceive now. You don't want to go along the shores. You don't want to swim because when it touches you, it can either cause sicknesses or start eating away at certain parts of the flesh itself. Now, designated, it only happens when the certain types of wet structure causeway events through the seaweed is articulated. There is actually a bulbous point on the plants, and they're called pods. They're little seed pods that are on these plants. And when the seed pods get wet, they get spiky. They're tiny and spiky. Once they hit the shore, that's when it really starts generalizing when it's wet, and it starts causing a major problem for mankind because of the circulation codes in that. But when it starts drying out, the defamation effect because of aeronautical streams currently being placed upon the planet and the realm and the heat indexer points, especially in Florida and other states affected, it would dry up and turn into, like I sent these pictures, so that way you're going to send them out to everyone so they can see what I'm talking about. They're like gray, the little crusty gray areas around it. It starts crusting up and actually turns into like a fine dust particle after a while. When that happens, and after the pod will actually be wet, and it will be smooth at first. Then it starts getting pointy once it starts drying up. That causes problems. The self-generalization and degeneralization effect after that, it starts getting out, it turns to a dust particle, aeronautical fence lines, manually move it upstream into the air and cause nasal sicknesses for mankind.
Wow.
Most people don't understand that. And it is true that that goes through one conditioning to the next. And since Space Force and the higher departments of the ETs and our affairs, what we work through to the Air Force, have been going against these negative perimeters, what these beings have been doing by dumping these seaweed particles out and causing problems, by decommissioning their own plateau of effect itself. So we're running in our own scores, they're running in theirs against us and against mankind.
You know, two things come to mind when you were just discussing this flesh-eating bacteria agent. Number one is you described it as very small and spiky. I seem to remember something that shut down the world for 3 years that was small and spiky. It's kind of convenient. They're sticking with that same tried and true principle there. And the second thing, of course, is this is summertime. Where do people go? They go to the beach. They go to the shores. It's going to become more populated now in Florida along the shorelines, whether you're in the Carolinas or where have you. But here in Florida, that's part of our economy. That's our tourism. That's what we run on, is the beaches and the beauty around us. And to think that they're physically attacking that, that's crazy. It's crazy.
Yep, and the fact that we have been currently working against them, so articulated codes of effect through the Air Force departments and the military zones and the Space Force, it's starting to slow down, and the particles to it are starting to deactivate. But there comes another problem because they're trying to work around that. You already know through electromagnetic interference lines, these AI, they will grow and accumulate and work around stuff. That's how artificial computers work. The same thing that's being generalized in mankind through these shots. Similar effect. Now that they are finding out these certain artificial programming speeds, because they are in these bacteria agents, they only cling on to certain holograms. Since that's being decommissioned, now we have to watch out for certain areas now because they're now accumulating black specks or black articulated refined particles along the rock interfaces and some of the trees along the seawalls here and along the beach. If it looks really black and it doesn't look like it normally looks that time of year and there's something not right, it's because they're generally moving on to that. And then maybe have to annually move that out of effect so that it's decommissioned altogether. Humans have got to understand there are other agents that, besides these graphical effects, these elements being produced in you, that they are causing to defamate mankind.
And, you know, that's what a lot of people don't understand, especially ones who got the thing. The reason why these things are effective, the reason why the spike protein it is so attractive to people, the reason why it goes after people, especially those who are, got the in their arm, is it attracts that. It's an mRNA thing. I mean, look this up, people. You need to read between the lines. You can't trust what the MSM is showing you. And we're glad that we're on the front line of this. Just do us all a favor. Stay away from any flesh-eating bacteria seaweed you may see on the beach. Now, do you think this impacts you if you go in the water, or is this a thing you physically have to touch the seaweed?
Well, you have to touch it.
Okay.
It's an accumulation code that it has to be touched on the hologram itself, and it's easy to just wash up on shore and do it that way. That's how it is. It spreads out and goes towards the shoreline.
Especially if you have little kids, because I can imagine having little kids at the beach. They're wanting to pick up everything and touch everything and discover, and I get it. But you got to be real careful this summer when you're visiting the beaches, when you're visiting other areas, and just don't touch the seaweed for right now until Blue tells you it's safe, I guess. What's going on with these meteorite impacts, though? It seems that this has increased lately, or no?
Well, there have been recent meteorites, especially two major ones, and one caused of subsonic boom near Central America not too long ago. I believe it was Texas, from what I was sent to you on the information. And another one more towards Alaska. These meteorites, especially the one towards Central America, may not be on a generalized good coding effect. And because of that, it may hold something inside the materialistic wavelength that could cause a problem for mankind. When we were speaking about with the meteorites, certain aperture effects, through Alaska and Central America as of recently, especially in Central America, close to Texas, as I had explained to you, may not have something, or may not have something to do with something, an unequal equilibrium statistic, meaning that co-aligning effect, it has to be monitored because one of them created subatomic boom, and that was more close to Central America itself. These may hold something on the inside of these materialistic zones, and they may not play something good. It may very well be something that be delivered here from another planetized grid itself, or just a maintainment code that it needs to be centered on. There are two different agents that deal with that, and there is also one that could correlate soon, going more towards Korea and underwater impasses itself.
You know, I've been noticing a lot of if you look for it between the lines, like they say, oh, there's a meteorite's going to be passing Earth soon, oh, this and that. And it's almost like they're trying to normalize things, like the other negative attributes in the world going on right now. They figure if they put it out there enough and act like everybody's behind it and act like everything's good and act like everything's normal, that enough people will buy into that. Do you think that this has that same thought behind it? Like, yeah, oh, it's no big deal. It's just a meteorite. Oh, it's no big deal. It's just that these things happen. No big deal. Go on about your business. Nothing to see here. Do you think this is something we need to be concerned with?
Yes, because these are different and the coloration is different. They are more dark and they're more metallic alloy and substructure, and they're huge. And if they were creating a subsonic particleized boom effect near Central America, there's a reason for that, and there's a reason why these things are landing like they are. They're hollow on the inside, and they may hold certain biochemical agents or items that could not be good for mankind. There are other meteorites that wouldn't subsidize with that, but the most recent ones, especially in general areas that would hint or play out to something else going on behind the scenes, humans need to pay attention for.
You know, it's funny to me. Well, not funny like haha, but it's funny like strange that, you know, the MSN, the government, all these institutions, all these people will act like, you know, they'll stick to a script. You know, it's funny to me that, like, for instance, when the deep state comes out and they say something, everybody says this. There's like 20, you'll get 20 sound bites from 20 different people that are have deep state involvement, and all have the exact same phrase.
The sharing of biased and false news
has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media publish these things simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
It's like the next day, the word went out. This is the phrase of the day. This is the thing we're going to say. Stick to the script. And it's amazing to me that no matter what it is, I get it that most humans can't handle the truth. But at the same time, trying to normalize things like we're doing in this world, trying to make it, oh, yeah, no, this is the way it is, and times have changed, and this. No, and I get it. Meteorites have affected our planet for a long time. It's just the sudden uptick in these things. You combine that with the recent sighting in Vegas, makes me believe that it's okay. We're trying to normalize this. And like we had talked about before, the slow dripping out of disclosure. Do you think this is a move that screams we're getting closer to disclosure? Or do you think disclosure's already happened and everybody just missed it because they normalized it?
Well, it's actually the third prospect. Disclosure is already happening, but it's still happening. It's moving forward, but people need to wake up still from it. Like, information is being leaked out. Things are being correlated outwards, but it's up to mankind to wake up from their neural standard and experiment codes and realize the data streams that are going on. They got to pay attention to the in-between. They got to pay attention to the in-behind scenarios of things. What's going on with the space side? what the hell has Elon Musk been doing lately? Why has he been using so many star units? What's this going on with Mars? I mean, rehabilitation scenarios, NASA, that'd be something that needs to be discussed next. What really is going on?
Yeah, that's part of the problem, I think, is the normalization of things and the making, the gradually putting it out there. You start with baby steps. You can't accept, if you ever seen one of those 7-pound steak challenges at the restaurant, the person doesn't pick up the whole steak and eat the whole 7-pound steak at one time. They cut it into little bites. And this works even if you're getting your little normal 8-ounce steak or whatever. You don't swallow the whole thing. You can't do that. You take it in little bites, and that's what's happening. So what were you leading to? What about what we're going to talk about next year with the space station and NASA?
International Space Station Hub. The hub stands for the home base, unitized base with the integrating point of effect where they would maintain it for Mars and Earth substandard, besides what we have talked about last time on the moon with the water bears. Now we're articulating about Mars. Now, Mars has been habitable, similar to the moon with the Zeta Reticuli race, except Mars has habitual notices with the Martians. Similar type of gray race, and we will talk about that towards the end of the show with the picture. But co-op through military agenda, government, and human affair, into the allotment calling codes of NASA itself, parts of the Air Force, parts of the Space Force, and parts of a SpaceX, into furtherizing, especially with what Elon Musk would have attained for, communications and rehabilitation scenarios on Mars, to be able to make it a soon habitable place for mankind. So Mars very well already may be habitable, but soon towards a lot here on this grid. Like we had stated before about the space elevators that go up and down between the moon and Earth, there could be a similar aspect between that and Mars too, except Mars would be habitable, and I believe the moon is for something else altogether, because it does run with our race, the Zetan's race, the Avatar. So Mars may, this is a hint, may or may not have been acceptable perimeters with governments in the past, also well with presidents, to maintain a management scenario, causeway of effect.
A lot of times...
This also goes with... Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
It also goes with kid units and being able to have them motivated, learning more about space and what can be enacted through that. They have programs do this.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because one of the things you had sent to me was something going back to a program in 2017, the XHAB Challenge. That's X-HAB. Go ahead and look this up, folks. This has already happened. This is already in the books. This is a study, and this is a challenge that was put out over 5 years ago. So if you don't think they've come to some sort of positive conclusion at the end of the 5 years from now, from 5 years ago, you're sadly mistaken. That's why living in Florida here, we see a rocket go up almost every day. It's amazing to me. And, we take it for granted. It's normalized here. It's like we were talking about before. So what we're saying is that what Elon's doing, and he said that he wanted to have a colony on Mars by 2029, most recently. What we're saying is this is real. This is happening. This is definitely moving forward, right?
Yes, and as part of the Federation protocols too for the next quantum age. It all enacts into the scene event to help saving man's, just to help a saving grace for mankind, a saving grace to rehabilitate to what other beings do too. Do you want to have a time you shake hands with a gray? You want to have a time where you can just co-op maybe with a reptile race, but a good type? I mean, integrating point and be able to co-op and communicate on a higher standard wave. They are real. Humans are not the only species in the universe. You need to get that through their heads. This habitat here on this planet has been played with for many eons by these negative beings. And one of the rehabilitation services to distribute mankind, to take them away from most of this ensnarement, is to motivate them forwards and bring them upwards.
You know, we talked a little bit just for a few minutes before we recorded here, and we had talked about, and I know you hadn't really seen pictures of this recent event in Vegas, but at the same time, they described the creatures that people supposedly saw. There's video and audio recordings here I'm going to share.
In your backyard?
Correct, and they're very large. 9 feet, 10 foot, I don't know, they look like aliens to us. Big eyes, they have big eyes,
Okay.
like I can't explain it, and big mouth. They're shiny eyes, and they're not human. They're 100% they're not human.
Happened to me. Keep in mind, this is midnight, and I'm fixing a truck in my backyard. At this point, I'm only with my brother, and I hear something fall from the sky.
They said that they were definitely not human. They were about 8 feet tall, with a greenish color hue, with large eyes. And what species did you tell me you thought that might be of a higher being?
The Ankara Acarats. Ankara Acarats. I mean, did they have a really thin figure from what you saw? Like they have slim margin, they're very thin, but the figurative nodes kind of curved, and maybe their bottom half maybe a little curved. If that's the case, they're in Andara Acartes. They're closer to the grays, but they're really, really tall and they're really intelligent. They have worked with deep governmentals, deep societies before, secret governments, presidents. But their species probably most likely, since you said that they have not harmed anybody and they came on a good reasoning effect, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
That's what they did?
Yeah.
Okay. So the protectors, they probably most likely run through the Ancient Federation Council of Old.
Does that race have a way or the technology for an invisibility cloak or some way to disappear or go to another dimension?
Most do. Most have articulated IO recon effects. And humans do too now because of the advanced military technologies they got from the higher beings.
That's amazing to me. Yeah, that's amazing to me because that's been the report that they were there 1 minute and then boom, they were gone. They were, there was a big flash. I don't know if it was a crash or what, but when a bunch of different people call in on a recorded line and say they saw one thing at the same time, my next question is this what they call a deep fake? Is this what they call, is this taking advantage of holograms and technology? My question is, do you think that the government's really behind this with some sort of false disclosure? Do you think that's a possibility? Not with that.
There are many beings that co-op with mankind, and there are many beings that hide behind the scenes and come back and forth in and out of the planetary realm under acceptable authorization. It goes to similar prospects if you're going on to another planet. You got to have authorization points. So those, yes, they're real. They have authorization points to go where they need to go. They're not considered a threat, but there are species who would be considered a threat, and humans are permitted to harm them or shoot them down or just take them out of commission. And I'm talking about the really, really negative ones that would cause a really bad malfunction upon this land. They either need to decommission them or lock them up. But to other beings or create a radon effect, they're not allowed on this planet. So that may have to go into something soon too. They may have to simulate a protective barrier screen against negative beings here, especially the ones that are currently doing their best to get rid of mankind.
It's amazing to me that the way things are unfolding here. We had talked about the creatures from other places, the beings, some are good, some are bad, just like here on Earth. And it's your knowledge and being able to differentiate between the two, the positive and the negative. And there is a war going on. There's a war going on right here on our planet. There's a war going on, obviously, in other dimensions around us. And there's a war going on in the inner Earth, like we had talked about in past episodes as well. My question is, are there other things that we need to be alerted about? Like maybe let's go ahead and talk from your perspective as a member of the Space Force and the Federation. Are there other things or other beings or other activities that we should be worried about right now?
Stop taking these COVID tests. Stop sticking them up your nose, because they keep pushing that. They keep pushing that agenda, and they keep pushing it. That's one thing mankind needs to stop doing. They need to avoid their products.
You know, my thing with the with what's going on with the disclosure, with the recent discovery of this flesh-eating bacteria, with it being spiked, combine that with what everybody got in the arm. You know, it's amazing to me that we can sit here and talk about it. And to someone like yourself, I'm very thankful that you're able to help disclose this information. But at the same time, there's a lot of people with the blinders on all the time, and they're just going to believe what they told. They're brainwashed. And you know what? You know how they don't know they're brainwashed? Because they're brainwashed. If you're brainwashed, you don't know you're brainwashed. If you've been told the sky is blue all your life, and one day you look up and the sky is green, and you're like, wow, the sky's really green. This is the type of impact. These are the type of things we're talking about. These are normal discoveries for you on a daily basis, but I'm very thankful we're able to share those things with other people. Now, you've always been open with me about your being a Fusal. Can you just briefly explain that again for people, how you got to become who you are?
Well, an articulated wavelength of interdimensional fusels or walk-ins that distribute among mankind. There are many higher beings or avatars that re-replicate their processing on planets itself, only because they cannot correlate because of their own gender opposites effect, or they're manually moving into another substructure. Mine runs in with the Zeta Reticuli race, which runs with the ancient council of 5, which used to be 9, but we will talk about the rest of the 4 next week. And there's also many others like reptiles races, some draconians a lot now, unfortunately. There's also a little bit of gray race substructure, but not many of the Fusals articulated, as well as Anunnaki and Andromeda species, Tarot societies, as well as vandalizations affected the Vikings. But Vikings, and I will distribute what they mean too in an upcoming show. Not Viking of what they have with the weapons and stuff. Not them, not the human part. There are ancient races of humanoids or advanced articulated beings with the Vikeen, Vikings. And they are one of the main races of old too. Humans don't understand that there are so many generalization codes of fusels going upon here through the many timelines that they can't wake up. All those that I have stated, especially Anunnaki, the Tarot societies, Lemoras, we've been around for many years, especially Pleiadians and Nordics, which are advanced articulated explorers of advanced human intellect. But advanced human intellect being in from another terrestrial code itself, another dimension. Causeways of effect, there's 2 different ways to represent it. 2 different scenes.
Wow. Understood. Hey, just like magic, we get so caught up in talking here, we're almost out of time again. Please, give us a final word for today.
I would. Manage yourself, maintain better ethics. Do your homework, people. Do your homework. Because if you don't, you're going to get lost in the scene of effect that's going on. It's like a big movie. I mean, everything's going on in wild scenes. We don't know where it's going. But we got to maintain our codes of ethic, and you got to do your homework. You got to maintain it. And another thing, Mike, we got to announce about the ET of the week as well.
Yeah, let's get right into that. Let's go ahead and do that. Tell us about the ET of the week.
Fast-looking alien! Where?
Warning! Alien approaching! Warning! Biophysical experiments extremely dangerous for Earth people.
It's a pretty good robot. He's a little bit of an alien, too, but I think he's mostly Channcellor. He's an alien world. You could be an alien world, right? Like not all robots are.
Yes, what we will be explaining about this week, Community of the Week programming fees of the Martians. Now, I sent you a picture. It's going to be hard for other people to see it too, but they more hyperdimensional sequencing codes when they fabricate on other statistics. Like spirits would be, but you see the hologram. Many humans see that up in the skies too. I've portrayed that dealing with hyperterrestrial and in fact, sitting there by a graveyard a few years back. I did post about this before. It's dark out. You got to zoom in. You got to look closely. I circled the in fact calling code of it to be able to see it squatting down and see Martians. They're smaller than Zetans. So Zetans range about 3.5 to 5 feet. Now the Martians are about 2 to 4 feet in length on perimeter scan. Then they have a charcoal brown skin, whereas grays have a more gray articulated silver skin. But they are family or cousins of them. You got to think like humans be the same way. They have cousins of different types of humans. Chinese, whatever, American, African American, you name it. All them different. Articulated skulls are still the same species, but different family representations, cousins, if you will. It goes to other types. So Martians are cousins of the Zeta Reticuli and other grays, and they kind of co-op with the Zeta Reticuli because they do live on Mars more or less, where certain other grays, like the Reticuli, co-op on the moon itself on its own data stream. But these they are hyperdimensional, so they like to time jump or hyper skip. And when they do that, they blend into the societies of ultra realms or other realms and be able to hologram themselves into their own movement speeds. That's why when people go ahead and they, especially those with ghost seekers who seek out ghosts, they think that they're seeking out spirits when they're actually finding that they're representing something much higher. They are actual ETI seekers that are similar to spirit seekers, but they're seeking for spirits of ETI, higher terrestrials. Believe it or not, they are not just physical, but they are so advanced that they can run on the higher dimensional planes.
Wow. Awesome stuff today. Wonderful, wonderful. Hey, just like that, we're out of time. Hey, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Again, go ahead and hit subscribe, like, click on the notifications so you're notified immediately when we post new material here. Blue, wonderful stuff again. Wrapping up episode 23 here. We'll talk with you next time.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.